Hello again, everybody. This is Bob Milam from the Salt Lake chapter of the Utah High School Football Officials Association with another study topic for 2019, this time a bonus section covering the special overtime rules adopted by the Utah High School Activities Association to resolve tied games here in the state of Utah. So let's look ahead and see what we're going to do today. Our overtime overview is this. We'll talk about background and definitions of both the overtime period and an overtime series. Ask the question, how can you determine if there indeed should be an overtime at the end of a tied game? What to do before overtime begins. We'll review with the crew, the chain crew, game management, coaches, captains, talk about the coin toss and subsequent option choices that the teams have. We'll cover what happens during the overtime for normal play, turnovers, and penalties, and then we'll sum everything up. So that's where we're going today. Let's get started. Well, the background. Here in the state of Utah, we play a different overtime than does the National Federation, and so we want to cover this with you. Let's give you some background and then we'll define the overtime period and overtime series. First, officials should follow Rule 311 Note, which is on the rule book on page 40, which is how to resolve tied games. This is then supplemented by the resolving tied games in the rule book on page 86, and finally, by the overtime procedures, which are found at this link for the Utah High School Activities Association. It's important that you understand all three areas in the rule book because all three are used to define how to resolve a tied game. The overtime period is defined as one series for each team, and a series is defined as an opportunity for each team to have offensive downs. So each overtime period consists of two series, one for each team. Now, should there be an overtime at the end of the game? Well, overtime in Utah applies to all varsity, JV, and sophomore level contests. We have to resolve them all by using this procedure. If the score is tied at the end of regulation time, do we always have to play in overtime? And the answer to that is no. Can the tied game be resolved prior to overtime? And if so, how? Well, if a foul is scored on a touchdown on a final play and time has expired, that carryover can be only done on the extra point, as defined by the rule found on page 42 that's listed here. Now, if you're having trouble remembering whether to resolve the overtime or not, I want to refer you to your penalty enforcement cheat card, game-ending scoring penalties. Refer to that penalty card so that you can know whether or not to carry them over to overtime or resolve them prior to overtime. Once you've done that and you've decided that there is going to be an overtime period or periods, then before overtime starts, you need to review with both your officiating crew, the chain crew, and game management some very important issues and cover some very important points. Any carryover penalty enforcements that will be happening at the start of the overtime could very much influence a team's choice for the coin flip that will follow. So be sure you cover this. Talk about the timers and their duties. What's going to happen to the game clock and to the play clock during overtime? As listed here, we're not going to use a game clock. It's overtime. But we will continue to use the play clock, and we will also time the timeouts that occur and intermissions that occur during overtime. Chain crew duties don't change here. Everything is exactly the same as it has been in the regular game. So no changes there, thankfully. But also something to think about with game management is crowd control and your exit plan out of the stadium. Undoubtedly, as these games get bigger and bigger as the season goes on, the crowd intensity and the crowd's personality and demeanor will change. So you need to think about this ahead of time so that you're not caught in a very ugly situation. Before overtime starts, you're going to review the various choices and rules with both coaches and captains of each team. We'll have a 3-minute intermission between the end of regulation and the start of overtime. 1 timeout is allowed per overtime period per team, but no carryover can occur from regulation. All timeouts that are on the board at the end of regulation time are wiped away. Timeouts that are called after an overtime period end are charged to the subsequent overtime period. Carryover penalty enforcement. Make sure you cover this. Where will the ball be placed for each scenario? If they go on offense first or defense first, where will the ball be placed if you have a penalty to enforce prior to the start of overtime? Then you're going to conduct the coin toss. In the coin toss, the visiting team will call the one and only coin flip. You only flip your coin once, but it's very important that you record the result of this coin flip, because the winner will choose either offense, defense, or the end of the field where the overtime period will be played. The losing team has the remaining option. For subsequent options, the teams will alternate the order of choice, meaning that we could indeed play the first overtime period at the north end of the stadium and the second overtime period at the south. These choices will alternate with each and every subsequent overtime period. After the first overtime period, a 2-minute intermission is allowed by rule. The coin flip loser then chooses first for the second overtime period, even though there is no coin flip associated with it. Should you go to a third or subsequent overtime periods, then the offense must attempt to go for 2 on a try following the touchdown. During overtime play, we begin 1st and 10 at the B25-yard line. The normal game scoring and the 25 and 40-second play clocks will apply, and as we mentioned, no game clock is used. Normal game line-to-gain rules will also apply. Teams can earn a first down in the Utah High School overtime procedures. The game ends when the score is not tied after completion of an overtime period. Very simple. But some factors will affect this. Let's talk about turnovers during overtime. What happens if a team fumbles or throws an interception or otherwise loses possession of the ball? Turnovers during a scrimmage down are live, but turnovers during a try down are dead and must be blown dead immediately. Live ball possession during a down by Team B will end Team A's offensive series. But if A regains possession during the down, that is, if there are 2 changes of possession during a single live ball period, then Team A must score on the play, or their series has ended. Penalties during overtime are a bit different as well, and you'll want to refer to the website for this. But let's cover the summary of what happens to penalties that occur in overtime. Fouls that occur prior to a change of possession during a down are handled exactly like regulation time. But fouls that occur after a possession change are a little bit different. Distance penalties are ignored for live ball fouls. So for example, if there is an interception and during the return, the intercepting team commits an illegal block in the back, the distance penalty for that is ignored, and Team B will start the next series 1st and 10 at the 25, or we will proceed to a coin flip for a subsequent period, or the game may be over. So ignore all distance penalties for live ball fouls. Dead ball fouls will always be enforced from the succeeding spot, including unsportsmanlike conduct, late hits, and other dead ball fouls. Double fouls that occur. If it's clean hands, meaning the defense commits their portion of the double foul following the change of possession, then just ignore the live ball fouls. If it's a dirty hands play, then we must offset and replay the down. For example, Team B commits pass interference and then subsequently intercepts the pass on a play where A was previously holding, both fouls occurring prior to change of possession. Or, let's say Team B commits pass interference, intercepts, and then during the run back, Team B is tackled by a Team A player by the face mask. These are offsetting fouls because Team B did not get the ball with clean hands. And it's important that we recognize these two principles when penalizing fouls that occur during overtime when there is a change of possession. This is all listed in the overtime rules on the website. Please print them out and become familiar with them prior to your game. All right, let's sum up what we've talked about today. Review the rules. No surprise here. Go to the rule book and go to the website and understand when you need to play overtime and when you do not. This is a key distinction that may help you out of some of these situations and help you end the game early. Review what to do before overtime starts and what to do in between the periods. Make sure everyone involved is well informed and is clear on what is going to happen. Don't allow yourself to be surprised by a coach who thought one thing was going to happen and then something else did. So make sure that you're very clear in your communication to crew, game administration, coaches, and captains. Review how to carry over penalties from regulation to overtime, when to do that and when to resolve them. Remember, only one coin toss following a regulation game. Subsequent options alternate, but all options are in play prior to each and every overtime period. Know when a turnover is live and when it's dead. Review your penalty procedures and note the differences. And finally, and most importantly, have an exit plan ahead of time. Well, good luck to you if you have overtime this year, and we hope you have a great season.